The Swiss watch industry is staring into an abyss that was theoretically impossible just 10 years ago. For over a century, brands like Rolex rested on a simple, arrogant assumption that their soul couldn't be copied. They believed no counterfeiter working in the shadows could ever replicate the mechanical perfection of a $30,000 Swiss timepiece. They were wrong. That era is dead, and it was killed by a clandestine manufacturing entity known as the N Factory. We have entered the age of the superclone. This isn't about cheap knockoffs anymore. We are talking about watches that use the same steel, the same ceramics, and movements that are parts interchangeable with genuine Rolex engines. The threat isn't just about lost revenue, it is a war for reality itself. If a $500 fake is indistinguishable from a luxury object costing 50 times more, then the entire economic structure of the luxury watch market is built on sand. Please take a second to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss the truth about the luxury market. To understand why executives in Geneva are losing sleep, we have to look at how the game changed. Before 2010, fake watches were a joke. They were made of cheap zinc alloy, they were too light, and they were powered by garbage quartz movements, or cheap generic gears. They were for tourists and people who didn't know any better. Then came the N Factory, or Noob Factory. They stopped guessing. They went out and bought genuine Swiss prototypes, Submariners, Daytonas, GMT Masters, and then they destroyed them. They disassembled these investment-grade watches and measured every single component with digital micrometers to a precision of 1/1000th of a millimeter. This birthed a new category of replica that the enthusiast community calls NWBIG. That stands for Not Worth Buying in Genuine. It represents the terrifying moment where the law of diminishing returns hits a vertical wall. These replicas are so close in weight, function, and reliability that paying the massive premium for the real thing yields zero benefit other than the psychological knowledge that you burned your money. Let's talk about the metal, because this is where Rolex's marketing really falls apart. For years, Rolex has bragged about their Oystersteel, which is a specific alloy called 904L stainless steel. Unlike the standard steel used by Omega or Breitling, this alloy has more nickel and chromium. It is harder to machine, it fights corrosion better, and it has a very specific cool white luster when you polish it. For a long time, the color of the steel was the easiest way to spot a fake. The fakes looked too yellow, but N Factory realized that if they wanted to win, they had to spend money. They retooled their entire production line to process 904L steel. This was a massive capital investment that implies serious financial backing. By matching the metallurgical signature of Rolex, they removed the most obvious visual difference. Now, the metal on a high-end fake is chemically identical to the metal coming out of Switzerland. But the real horror story for the Swiss is the movement inside the watch. The holy grail of the replica industry was always the Rolex Daytona. The real Daytona uses a movement called the caliber 4130. It is a masterpiece of engineering that allows the watch to be incredibly thin, just 12.2 millimeters. Old fakes had to use bulky, off-the-shelf movements, which made the watch too thick. Collectors call this the fat case flaw, and it was an instant giveaway. N Factory solved this by funding the development of the clone 4130, also known as the Dandong 4130. This is not a modified movement, it is a ground-up, reverse-engineered clone of the Rolex architecture. It has the same vertical clutch, which allows the chronograph to start smoothly without jumping. It has the same column wheel, and most importantly, it has the exact same slim profile. Here is the part that should make you cynical about the craftsmanship you are overpaying for. The parts are interchangeable. If a gear breaks in your fake Dandong movement, you can replace it with a genuine Rolex part. That means a criminal factory in China has achieved manufacturing tolerances within the same ISO standards as Rolex. If they can do it for pennies on the dollar, what exactly are you paying for? In April 2021, the Chinese government launched massive raids. They shut down N Factory, seized machinery, and arrested personnel. The Swiss industry breathed a sigh of relief, thinking they had cut off the head of the snake. It was a strategic miscalculation. The knowledge didn't disappear, it just decentralized. This is what we call the Hydra Effect. From the ashes of Noob rose new titans like Clean Factory and VS Factory, and because they have to compete with each other, the quality actually got better. Clean Factory focused on aesthetics. Rolex uses a proprietary ceramic for their bezels that is dusted with platinum. Clean Factory figured out how to replicate the specific Rolex green and the bicolor ceramics that were thought to be impossible to copy. Their bezels are coated with real platinum dust so they don't fade or grey out. Then you have VS Factory, the engineers. They developed a clone of the current date movement that has a genuine 72-hour power reserve. That matches the Rolex spec perfectly. They also mastered deep crystal technology. The date magnifier on these watches has the black hole effect, where the glass is so clear the date looks like it's floating in a void. This was a feature experts used to rely on to distinguish real from fake. Now the fakes have it too. They are even beating the anti-counterfeit measures. In 2001, Rolex started using a laser to etch a tiny crown into the glass at the 6 o'clock position. It's supposed to be invisible to the naked eye. The superclones now use high-frequency lasers to replicate the exact pointillism of the genuine crown. They successfully reverse-engineered the security feature itself. This leads us to the most dangerous phenomenon in the market today, the Frankenwatch. Because the clone movements are dimensionally identical to the real ones, they act as a perfect chassis for genuine parts. Here is the recipe for disaster. A scammer buys a high-end replica for $700. They hop on the secondary market and buy a genuine Rolex dial, genuine hands, and a genuine crystal. They install these real parts onto the fake movement and case. For about $3,500, they have built a watch that is visually indistinguishable from a $35,000 genuine model. The dial is real. The hands are real. The steel is the same. The movement functions exactly the same. Even a dealer opening the back might get fooled because the clone movement has the correct engravings and the correct blue hairspring. Watchfinder & Company, one of the biggest pre-owned retailers in the world, admitted that up to 10% of the watches they receive from sellers are fake. Half of those are Rolex replicas. This corruption has reached the highest levels. A tropical Omega Speedmaster sold at auction for a record-breaking $3.4 million. It turned out to be a Frankenwatch assembled from disparate parts. If the world's top auctioneers and the brand's own historians can be duped, what chance do you have? The economic impact of this is devastating because the Swiss industry relies on the idea that these watches are investments. But there are an estimated 23.3 million fake watches circulating in the US market alone. This is a massive shadow supply. Rolex artificially restricts supply to keep prices high. But the superclone factories operate with unlimited capacity. When a teenager can wear a watch that looks identical to your $15,000 Submariner, the status signal of the genuine watch is diluted to nothing. The paranoia is real. 54% of Americans who have been conned by a fake say they will never purchase pre-owned again. This destroys the liquidity of the market. And what is the Swiss response? Rolex launched their Certified Pre-Owned program. This is the ultimate cynicism. They know the market is flooded with superclones that are nearly impossible to detect. So their solution is to charge you a massive premium to buy a used watch from them, just for the privilege of knowing it's real. They are effectively saying the only way to be safe is to pay them for protection. The N Factory didn't just make fake watches, they manufactured a crisis of reality. They proved that the magic of Swiss watchmaking is really just mechanical engineering, and engineering can be copied. The superclone is a mirror reflecting an uncomfortable truth. In the age of advanced manufacturing, luxury is increasingly just a story we tell ourselves, rather than a physical reality we can hold. If you had to choose today, would you buy one genuine Rolex for retail price, or 5 different superclones that are 99% identical and keep the rest of your cash? Let me know in the comments.